Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. As always, if you'd like to make a comment or send in a question or whatever, please do so. You'll see a little thing on the bottom of your right-hand bottom of your screen where you can make comments and you can ask questions either of myself or Keith or both, whichever you prefer. But as always, please be respectful of the show and particularly of my guest. Lots to talk about tonight, so please do send in your comments. Keith, it's been another week where VAR has been to the fore, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But you sent me an article today that you'd written about an incident where referees, match officials had to be escorted off the field at a, shall we say, a lower league game in England,
Yes.
I think between Notts County and Crewe, I don't know which way, who was at home. Just explain that to us, please.
Well, I think that there was overheating in the crowd. One of the problems lower down now is that the cost of having policemen at grounds has become a little bit too expensive. So they rely on training stewards in order to be able to ensure the safety of spectators and, of course, the safety of match officials. But I think over certain decisions, the referee was replaced through injury, and the fourth official took over. And as a result of that, I think there was some altercation about a big decision, and it got a bit nasty. And I think that it was reported in the media, and therefore I've no doubt that the FA will look very seriously at it. The one thing about our FA is that those sort of incidents at the, if you like, the upper end of our game are rare, and so therefore the FA will certainly take a look and find out more. And of course, one thing to our younger referees that tune in, I'm always mindful, if you are involved in some form of altercation, a threat, then the important thing is to report it. And remember that the law supports you, even if, I can remember once leaving a game and getting a fair amount of abuse. And then I caught a public transport. I didn't have a car. I was a young referee. And on that bus, I was again threatened. And I reported that. And I was surprised that the person involved got a sine die suspension. What that meant was he couldn't referee again, couldn't play again for some considerable time. So one of those things you don't want to happen.
No, and I'm just trying to find a picture here of my namesake. No relation. His name is Daniel Sweeney, and he's from the Midlands of the country. And he was assaulted in the car park by 4 thugs, and that's the only way to describe him. And that's a result of what happened to him.
Yeah,
they broke his eye socket, they broke his cheekbone, and they broke his nose as a result of whatever decision they disagreed with. But I mean, that's appalling.
Yeah.
And then what's even worse, in my opinion, because this is really cowardly, is this lady referee in Pakistan. You can see the blood coming down from behind her ear there.
Yes.
He was assaulted as well.
Yeah.
So, I was assaulted a couple of times in my life, but matches fans getting heated and very heated under the collar, pretty regularly in South Africa now. I'm at pains to say that not all the time, but there are times when we had to be escorted off the pitch by security. And in fact, at one time, me and my assistants or linesmen, as they were then, locked in the dressing room for an hour and a half and taken out of the ground in a police armored personnel carrier. Now this kind of thing, really, you don't expect that in this side of the world.
No.
And I hope that the FA will take a very, very dim view of this and deal with the perpetrators.
Yeah. I mean, I think that.
Just another thing, Keith, on when you say policing is expensive, But if there's a crowd of people anywhere, whether it's a march or it's a concert or football match, surely there has to be a certain amount of police present.
I think that in football, some years ago, there was a big argument regarding how much the policing was costing. And at the same time, there was also, with big games, the number of police that were being taken off frontline duties to patrol football games. And I think that balance is always a difficult one. And I do think that, we have to ensure, I think football has to ensure the safety of those participants that are taking place. I mean, fortunately, these things are rare compared to the number of games that are played. But nonetheless, I think we're pretty lucky in certainly in England generally. The stewards are pretty well trained. And sometimes when I go to games and I look at the size of them and I think to myself, cracky, I wouldn't want to challenge you in that situation. But then interestingly, there's quite a good presence of women. And I think that, you look at that and think, well, can you deal with the rough and tumble? But in fact, I think sometimes having women present in that situation calms the situation. They're able to communicate probably without any threat and bring a bit of humor into it. I think on the main they do a good job. It's rare when it breaks out, and of course, it is rare, and we don't want to affect people who want to take up the whistle and become referees.
And I suppose with women stewards and security being present, the tough guys, probably would be less inclined to assault or to attack a female. Some wouldn't, I know, certainly, and I've seen it in action. Some guys are really, I mean, not use the wrong words, but, probably less likely to attack a female steward than they would a male steward.
Well, I think what's important here is that when we have cases like this chap called Sweeney, then in those situations they become an assault charge in court, and we have had spectators that have gone to football matches and been jailed for assaults on match officials, and of course, one of the great things that I have seen is you may have limited numbers of policing, but the technology is amazing. And they're able to actually zone in on parts of the crowd and effectively take action. Even after the game, bring charges against individuals who are either shouting racial abuse or any other aspect, throwing coins or something. These rare things, but if you go to a football match in England, you've got to be very careful.
Yeah. And of course, it's important to stress that the laws of the game apply on the field, but the laws of the land apply everywhere, including on the field of play.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Big discussion on the incident with Man City and Chelsea yesterday, the Haaland penalty where he jumped up and down, claiming to be pulled down by a man who was only half his size, Cucurella. Not that makes any difference. Did you see the game and did you agree with it?
I did. And I obviously have written about it. And I'm really concerned about some of the comments that have been made. I think, first of all, I'm not so sure that Anthony Taylor, the referee, had the best viewing angle of the incident. And it's easy, isn't it? When you see something like that, what he's seen is Cucurella's hauling of Haaland to the ground. But when you
he's
review
a big man, it would be difficult to haul him to the
well,
ground.
I mean, I'm quite clear. I'm quite clear that, first of all, the first offender was Haaland.
Yeah.
He grabbed Cucurella and pulled him towards him. And the pace of Haaland then, almost like a snowplow, ran Cucurella to the ground, and they both finished up on the floor. I was amazed that a penalty kick was awarded. And as it was awarded, I'm thinking VAR's got to come in here. And I just feel so, when you examine these things, one thing that's worrying me now is the interpretation of clear and obvious. And it seems to me that the common sense has been thrown out the window here, because I would have liked Anthony Taylor to have been invited to the monitor to have a view. See, there are 22 cameras at a football match. I've said this before. And the referee's only got one pair of eyes. And his viewing angle, and Taylor was in a relatively good position, but he's looking at a picture that might well have been covered by the actions of the player, because it was the far side of the two players, and Taylor's looking at an angle. So he's seeing the outcome. He's not actually seen that first offence, in my opinion. And so I was disappointed they didn't come across and have a look and invite him to have a look at the monitor. I think had he looked at the monitor, he would have given a penalty kick. That was my view, until listening to Dermot Gallagher explaining that both were holding and the penalty was the outcome. And in fairness, I think they have I think she's called Sue Smith, the person who reviews on RefWatch on Sky. And she was absolutely spot on. She said, well, Dermot, Holland pulled the player towards him. He was the first offender. And that's the offence. It isn't about the strongest one committing the offence that's the one that's penalised. I just think that at times I worry about how VAR is operating. I think every week we see situations that are a worry. We had last week, we had the push, the Newcastle goal allowed. If you remember, we talked about it. And what we had is we had myself, Halsey, Clattenburg, referees of the past, and even Dermot Gallagher said this was a push and the goal should have been disallowed. And in England, the at the office or somewhere in the Premier League, they have a review panel made up of ex-players, managers, and referees.
What is that panel, and how they make?
I mean, they are supposed to review these big decisions and come out with a statement, and they've come out with a statement saying that this, that was the goal was okay to allow it. So they're actually condoning a player who's actually pushed an opponent.
Do you know who sits on this panel?
Well, they as I understand it, they have 3 people sitting. It might be 5. There are some that are ex-players, ex-managers, and I think they have a pool, and they bring that pool together to make judgments. And I thought, okay, he's slightly biased, or could be deemed to be biased, but I think Martin Keown said, "How can they come to that decision?"
Former Arsenal player.
Yeah, I'm shocked by the fact that somebody that's not refereed can come out and make a judgment on a decision that is so clear that the referee got it wrong. And if we don't get transparency, honesty, we all know that as referees we learn from our mistakes. It's not the ideal learning platform.
Yeah.
But the one thing a referee does is if he makes an error, he has to examine the incident in detail, particularly if video is available, and then examine, why did I make that error? How can I avoid it in the future? And sometimes it's an adjustment on positioning. It's sometimes a judgment on application of law. Because at the moment, I'm concerned about the fact that it appears that the PGMOL referees, when faced with a player who launches himself off the field at pace with either 1 or 2 feet forward, they're actually determining whether it's a red card or not in terms of where the landing area is on the opponent. So if you take, again, in that same match last week, when you had Havertz charging in, launching himself 1 foot forward, takes some of the player. I was hearing referees saying, well, he hadn't taken enough of the player. And I referred to the fact that some years ago, Steve Bennett was at Old Trafford and he sent Cristiano Ronaldo off for a 2-footed lunge that missed everything. And Ronaldo finished up on his backside, and Bennett issued a red card straight away. And we were questioning that at the time. And I can remember making contact with the IFAB, and they clarified it very clearly and said Steve Bennett was correct in law. The actions of the player, excessive force, launching himself off the ground, out of control, was sufficient to say that he'd endangered the safety of an opponent.
Yeah.
Red card.
I think, as you and I discussed also last week, there's the part of Law 12 that says striking or attempting to strike.
Correct.
Kicking or attempting. So he was attempting to. The fact that he didn't make contact is neither here nor there. The fact that he did what he did, and if he had made contact, could have caused whatever. Could put him there out of the game for the rest of his life. The fact that he did, and that needs to be punished.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy. Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned just prior to going on to show is one of our listeners talking about time wasting around goalkeeper and throwing.
Oh yeah, this is Quentin from Johannesburg. He contacted me today. He said, "Can you please discuss time wasting by goalkeepers and throw-ins by players, and the amount of time it takes to take a throw and to take a goal kick?" Yeah.
Well, let us first say that if the goalkeeper has got possession in his hands and deemed to be in control of the ball, at that point that you as a referee deem that he's in control and his next move is to release it, he has 6 seconds in which to release it. And if he doesn't, he's broken the law, and that is an indirect free kick awarded to the attacking team. And I think, I make the point that I think referees have forgotten that law. I can't remember when it was last invoked.
Oh, it certainly seems so, Keith, because the amount of time that's been wasted by goalkeepers holding on to the ball. I mean, the standard now seems to be anything between 15 and 20 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. And therefore, as a referee, you've got the law that supports you, 6 seconds. You've got the law that would support you for time wasting. So again, that goalkeeper can be cautioned for time wasting, in the same way that if he's taking goal kicks and he's taking a too long a time, again, in that situation, have the quiet word with the goalkeeper, make it quite clear that you want the kicks to be taken quickly. You can do that at a corner kick, remind him quietly. You can say to the captain, if your goalkeeper doesn't start speeding up the process, I'm going to caution him. So I think the law is there. The referees have got to apply it. That's the first.
What do you do if I'm being facetious now, Keith. What do you do if the captain is the goalkeeper?
Well, in that situation, he's got one warning. I mean, the reason I'm talking to the captain is that if I then have to caution the goalkeeper and he comes running towards me, the captain, having a moan, I will just say to him, I've just warned you. Yeah. I made it clear to you that the goalkeeper is wasting time. So that is one aspect of it. And a previous law used to be 4 steps. If we're going back in the 80s, late 80s, a goalkeeper was only allowed to take 4 steps.
Correct.
And I can remember in a very big game, Germany versus Italy, which was the opening game of the 1988 Euros, where Walter Zenga took 5 steps on 2 or 3 occasions. He got a warning in between. Half time, I called the manager of Italy to my dressing room and said, "Look, your goalkeeper is consistently taking 5 steps. We go into the second half. I'm going to penalise him. If he goes more than 4, I'm going to penalise him." And he did. And interestingly, the outcome of that was, from the indirect free kick, Germany scored the equalising goal. So, look, I think it's important, no matter what the match is, that you apply the law. Now we get to the throw-ins. Look, referees have to be proactive. My suggestion too is that when you signal for a throw-in to be taken, just stand opposite where the ball went out. And as the player's getting possession of the ball, tell him that's where you want him to take the throw. So you indicate before he's got possession, or even when he's got possession, where you want the throw-in taken from. And of course, penalise if he doesn't take it from the right spot. So set the example early in the game.
Yeah.
You know, we see players taking 10, 15 yards and not being punished.
Absolutely.
And so that's the aspect. The other thing I might add is that prior to the start of this season, there was quite a substantial document produced by the PGMOL, and part of it was on the area of time wasting. And they made it quite clear that they would take a very strong and firm action against time wasting. As a result, we've been seeing 100-minute matches. We've been seeing an extension of added time. And one additional thing that they did, which surprised me, which is not in the laws of the game, is that when a player has been injured and he's been treated on the field of play and then goes off, as in law, the PGMOL have indicated that play restarts without that player. He's still off the field of play for a minimum 30 seconds. And you think, oh, that's pretty good. However, now we've got the problem that when a player receives an injury from a challenge that his opponent has received a yellow card, he's going off, and the player who's committed the foul has got a team of 11 players, and the one that's got injured has got 10. So I think they've got to address that one pretty quickly, because they
really need to change that. Yeah,
Yeah.
the player, apart from and as well as getting a yellow card, should also be made to go off.
Yeah.
So that
But I mean, I've been saying for 10 years, and you can go back on records, I believe that the game requires an independent timekeeper, and I generally believe that a countdown clock, so that everybody can see what's happening.
I just want to throw in another time wasting issue, Keith. At one time, when the ball went out for a goal kick, the kick was taken on that side of the field.
Yes.
If it went on the left, it was taken on the left. If it went on the right, it was taken on the right. Then they changed it and said, no. In order to speed up the game, you can take it from either side. What are they doing? They're taking the ball. If it goes out on the left, they're bringing it all the way over to the right.
Absolutely.
I mean, and they're getting away. It's absolute nonsense. And again, it's, I've been criticized for criticizing referees. And I always say I don't criticize referees for what they're doing. I criticize them for what they're not doing. And a lot of them are not doing their job.
Yeah.
The other issue, Keith, which was clamped down, and I thought was to be clamped down, was this crowding around the referee when a decision has been made, or if they're waiting on VAR to make a decision, they're still coming in and putting in their sixpence worth. Surely
I think we're seeing this as a growing problem. I don't think the pre-season sort of dialogue, warnings or whatever have had any form of impact. I mean, we see a You know, we see a penalty kick awarded and we have a long review and we've got players, 5, 6 players surrounding. I can tell you that when I was the boss of the PGMOL, I got agreement with all the clubs and the Premier League, and it was enforced, and that was when 3 or more players approached the referee. I use the word surrounded the referee.
Yeah.
In that situation, that had to be reported. And the clubs were fined. They were fined for failing to control their players. And I think that's drifted a little bit. It's a little bit, I said to someone earlier today, the importance is the quality of the report that you issue to the authorities, that it's got to have clarity.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that referees perhaps think it's too big a hassle to issue a written report. Therefore, I'm not going to give a yellow card on this occasion or whatever. And I think to myself, look, do your job, follow the job up by having good quality administration from your point of view, and issue it. Because I'm telling you, if in England there is an offence where you don't apply and there's an assessor around at grassroots level, you'll get punished pretty effectively. Could cost you a promotion.
And rightly so. And rightly so. And what you said there a moment ago, I knew of referees in the past. These guys have been around for years, and they just run around the center circle, and all kinds of things happening, and they don't report them, and they say, "Oh no, it's not worth the hassle." And so, but, I said, "Well, you're not." And I've brought this up at referees' meetings that I've been at. I said, "But you're not doing your job then, because what you're doing is you're making the job more difficult for the next guy who comes along to referee that team. Oh, but Jack last week didn't book me. Now you're booking." And this is where the inconsistency comes in. And I'm sure, like England or like Ireland, England's probably the same, where you'll get guys at grassroots level on a Sunday morning, couldn't be bothered, just get the results, send in the card and collect the money.
Yeah. And I think that's a shame, because I think that, I think every referee, no matter what level that you're officiating it, you should treat it as a cup final.
Absolutely.
You're getting paid. You're getting paid to do a job, and I think you've got to do it as effectively and as well as you possibly can do. And I mean, otherwise, look, if you're getting to the stage where you're just doing it for the money and you're losing interest, back in.
Yeah. And I think that's happening a lot in the US, particularly at college football and other games. Guys contact me and say, "Well, I had 4 games yesterday."
I know.
4 games in one day, and that's purely for the money. And if you're only in it for the money, then you're in the wrong game. Just get out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Keith, as always, thank you very much again.
Pleasure.
We'll do it all again next Monday.
Thank you.
And thank you also for joining in. I know we had Andre from Lebanon. I think he contacted you, Keith, also about a couple of penalty incidents he did me. And Quentin in Johannesburg, and lots of other people around the world who tune into the show. We'll do it all again next Monday. Until then, bye-bye and God bless. Thank you.
Bye.